you know what breaks my heart? Some children spend their entire childhood being misunderstood. They get called lazy, stubborn, naughty, slow, or disrespectful. But nobody realizes that their brain may actually be struggling to do things that look easy to everyone else. And sometimes, the scariest part is this. The child themselves doesn't even know why they're struggling. They just slowly grow up believing that I'm just stupid. Sometimes the child who looks lazy is actually fighting a battle inside the brain. Today, we're going to talk about something important. The different types of challenges a special needs child can face. Things like autism, ADHD, dyslexia, or DLD, GDD. Early understanding changes lives, and late understanding can leave emotional scars for years. Let's start with autism. Autism is not simply bad social skills. No, scientifically, autism affects how the brain processes a few different areas: communication, sensory information, emotions, routines, and social interaction. Now, many autistic children experience differences in neural connectivity and sensory processing. Now, this means the world may literally feel louder, brighter, more confusing, or more overwhelming to them. Some children avoid eye contact. They repeat phrases. They become extremely distressed when changes happens in their routine, or become deeply focused or deeply interested in particular things. Now, when should a parent be concerned? Parents or teachers should pay attention if a child doesn't respond to their name, or if a child has delay in speech, or they struggle with social interaction, or has repetitive behaviors, or they have difficulty in transition. Now, repetitive behavior could be described as if they are constantly fidgeting, seeing them flapping their hands, tiptoeing very often, if we see them shaking their head quite often. These are signs of repetitive behaviors, actions that we can see, things that they perform from a very frequent basis. The other thing that I would like to elaborate more is when they have difficulty in transitions, not only with environment, but people and also routines. Autistic children find it hard to adapt quickly to changes. Let's say in their routine, just a minor changes is done. Sometimes they will have a huge meltdown. And if parents see these kind of signs, they can start to take note of this and check the frequency of how often the meltdown is when there is a change of routine, people, or environment. Some autistic children are not refusing the world. It's just that the world simply feels too overwhelming for their nervous system. Now let's talk about ADHD. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. This is one of the most misunderstood conditions in education. People think ADHD means they can't sit still, but scientifically, ADHD is actually an executive functioning disorder. The brain simply struggles with impulses control or sustaining attention, dopamine regulation, working memory, and emotional regulation. This is why some children forget instructions, or that they interrupt constantly, they lose their things, or they appear unmotivated, or they just jump from task to task. It is not always a discipline problem. Now, the ADHD brain constantly seeks stimulation because dopamine regulation is different. That's why some children can focus for hours on game, but cannot focus for 5 minutes on homework. It's not because they don't care about homework, but because motivation and attention are neurological processed differently. Here is when we should start to be concerned. When symptoms happen across multiple settings, when it affects the learning, friendship, emotional well-being, and persists over time. ADHD children has time blindness. They can't really track time that well. I think it is important to note, if your child is struggling with ADHD, is that ADHD child is often trying harder than everyone realizes. They're putting in a lot of effort. Now, dyslexia. Dyslexia is not seeing words backwards. That's one of the common belief. Dyslexia primarily affects the phonological processing, what they are hearing. The brain struggles with connecting the letters, the sounds, and the language patterns. So, a child may read slowly, may skip words, he may be confused with sounds, he may be struggling with spelling or avoid reading. Most of the times, they become very emotionally exhausted when it comes to reading. Sadly, many intelligent children with dyslexia start believing that they are stupid because traditional classrooms reward fast reading. But dyslexia has nothing to do with intelligence. Many successful entrepreneurs, scientists, and creatives have dyslexia. Their brains simply process language differently. So, when should we be concerned? Now, pay attention. If a child struggles recognizing sounds, or that they avoid reading, or they have poor spelling, or when you see that they start to guess the word. Now, the next one is deeply misunderstood. Developmental language disorder, or in other words, DLD. Now, DLD affects language comprehension and expression. And many children with DLD are mistaken for being inattentive or being unmotivated or even not listening. But the real issue is language processing. The child is struggling to understand instructions. The way they form the sentence is very different and they find it hard to organize their thoughts. Apart from that, they have difficulty understanding vocabulary or following conversations. And also, they have difficulty in expressing their ideas clearly to others. And here's something important. Language comes first before reading. If language is weak, reading becomes much harder because words have no deep meaning attached to them. Now, when should we be concerned? Be concerned when your child's speech is delayed. Every single child has a developmental milestone in their speech. So look up and check to see what appropriate age should a child speak with a certain amount of vocabulary, with a certain amount of speech, how long the sentence structure should be. So when speech is delayed, be concerned for that. Some other signs of DLD are when your instructions are misunderstood often, or that their vocabulary is limited and conversations are difficult for them. And one more thing, when their storytelling is weak, sometimes we'll find students, they're trying to describe something that they're saying, but then they'll be stuck, they'll be go, when they're storytelling, when you see these kind of patterns going on, that child might be struggling with DLD. Remember, a child cannot read meaningfully if language itself is not fully understood first. Now, let's talk about global developmental delay, GDD. And GDD means a child shows significant delays across multiple developmental areas. Their speech, their motor skills, their cognition, their social skills, or adaptive functioning. Now, it does not automatically define the child's future. Some children catch up significantly with early intervention. If a parent is concerned and would like to seek for assessment, here are some assessments that would be great to help your child to find out. So number one, find an occupational therapy, get an OT assessment. This will help them. Speech assessment, ST assessment, because a lot of autistic child, they may also struggle with their speech. Not only speech delay, but also in structuring their speech. The way they sentence their speech is quite different from how we may structure them. Also go for a developmental pediatrician evaluation or a clinical psychologist assessment. It is very difficult when we find out something is wrong. And here's the dangerous thing that many adults make, is that they wait too long. They said maybe he'll grow out of it, or sometimes children will develop later. But sometimes waiting delays support during the most important years of brain development. The brain has neuroplasticity. especially in early childhood, which means early intervention can significantly improve outcomes. So seek help when the struggle persists, when their learning gaps widen, or when we see that their emotional distress increases, when we see their meltdowns so frequent, when their social differences worsen. And please remember this: a diagnosis is not a label to destroy a child. Sometimes it's the explanation that finally saves them. Because once you understand the struggle, you stop punishing the child for symptoms they cannot control. What often breaks a child is not the diagnosis. The diagnosis didn't break the child, but the misunderstanding did. You know what scares me the most? Not the disorders themselves, but how many children are silently suffering while adults keep on saying that they're just lazy, that they're just naughty, that they need more discipline, or that they'll grow out of it. Some children spend years drowning while everyone argues whether the water is real. And eventually, some stop trying completely. Not because they are not capable, but because hopelessness is exhausting. The saddest children are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are simply the ones who gave up asking for help. Imagine trying every single day and still feeling like you are failing at being a normal child. That pain changes a person. So if you are a parent or a teacher or someone working with children, please remember this: behaviour is communication. Struggles are clues, and behind every difficult child, there may be an invisible neurological battle that nobody else can see. Some children don't need to be pushed harsher, they need understanding, because the child you save today may become the adult who finally believes that I was never stupid after all.